Great. Real pleasure to be here. I think the turnout, the agenda, the speakers of today coming together and thinking about the future of tech and accessibility is awesome. And so myself, I'm Paul Smyth. I lead our digital accessibility efforts at Barclays, something I've done for the past 5 years. So really, over the next few minutes, I want to be thinking about the future of banking and looking at it from an accessibility lens. I wanted to really share with you 3 stories. I guess the first of it is about how we are reimagining and rethinking about what accessibility is, why it matters, and how we go above just compliance and checklists, how we build that culture of inclusion. I want to share quite openly about some of the work we're doing internally within the bank. Secondly, I wanted to cover off again that point about some forward-looking, some future-gazing about what can we expect of how banking will change, hopefully for the better, to be more inclusive and easier for all of us. But before doing that, let me kind of share my sort of personal story. I think when many of us think about accessibility, we think about disability, the broken bodies, wrongly wired minds. And I think for me, on a personal level, accessibility or the lack of it is about how it limits opportunities and choices and independence. So, for example, my backstory, I came from finance and risk. In my teens, I lost most of my sight. In my 20s, I got diabetes. In my 30s, I've just been off for 2 months with major spinal surgery. And I don't say that to make a point of kicking ass at disability top trumps. I say that because I'm sort of acutely aware of how the trivial tasks of popping to the shops to getting some cereal is compounded, with bad sight. Now, I love cornflakes because they're unintentionally big and bold and easy for me to find. Sort of compounding disabilities, having to have healthier options, brightly boxed porridges again, sort of made more difficult. So I get that, and I get the fact that folks who struggle navigating and communicating in the real physical world have the most, arguably, to benefit from the digital world that we're all responsible for building, and how tech is this leveller or enabler to remove these barriers, to improve lives and expand human potential. So many of you have heard me talk over the months and years about our accessibility agenda at the bank, and I've got a lot of stuff to cover. So I guess the short answer is, 5 years back when I started, the focus was on our high street bank branches. It was about making physical accessibility. But of course, with the drive to digital, to using our smartphones in our pockets to check our bank balances, the world's a very different place now. I think a turning point for us was 5 years back, working with RNIB in their Make Money Talk campaign, being the first bank to launch talking cash machines, where low, no sight customers with print difficulties could access their cash independently for the first time. And seeing those customers vote with their feet to our bank, recognising that this was good for business and good for society, was a huge catalyst for change. So since then, we've done a whole range of added support and services, from high-vis cards, virtual sign language interpreters for the hearing impaired, and contactless, which I'll cover some of these. And we've gone for a bigger, bolder ambition. So our ambition to become the most accessible and inclusive FTSE company. So it's something we're serious and committed about. And I think as our agenda has matured, so too has our thinking on accessibility, that it's not this bureaucratically burdensome, compliance checklist to do the bare legal minimum. We think about it in a different way, and I want to hopefully show, if there's sound, a quick 1-2 minute video that we have and that we give internally.
Ever tried to access mobile banking on a bouncy train? Or found yourself needing to play a video in a crowded office? Then chances are your experience was influenced by whether the digital features you were using were built with accessibility in mind. Accessibility is often associated with getting it right for people with disabilities, and that's vital, not least because of the number of people we might otherwise exclude. On average, 1 in 5 people have a disability or impairment. The purple pound, the annual disposable income of disabled people, is $1 trillion globally. But by designing for difference, we also factor in situational or temporary impairments which can inhibit anyone's ability to interact with digital services. The World Health Organization's definition of disability is a mismatch in interaction between the features of a person's body and the features of the environment in which they live. The great thing about us humans is we're all different. So how we interact with technology will be different too, whether we have a disability or not. That's why at Barclays, accessibility means ensuring that everyone can use our products and services or be employed by us. It's that simple. It's our ambition to be the most inclusive and accessible company in the FTSE 100. Great ambition, but surely what we offer is already easy for people to use. Well, that depends on your perspective. By designing based on our own abilities and perspectives, we create digital solutions that work for some, but unintentionally exclude others. User feedback shows our services can be frustrating or just not usable. By keeping a range of abilities and preferences in mind from concept to test, we can create a better product and experience for all. We did that for Pingit and Barclays Mobile Banking, and both achieved kite marks for accessibility. This shows what we can do when we really design with difference in mind. Okay, I get it, but where do I start? How can we make this accessible? How would you navigate screens if you had a visual impairment or in bright sunlight? How would you use a touchscreen slider if you had a dexterity impairment, or if you were an active parent juggling a baby in one hand and phone in another? Got it. So now what? Thinking about accessibility early saves time, energy and money and leads to better user satisfaction. Any resources I can use? Loads. Use the PAW principles and other practical tools available. But the best resource available to all of us is being curious about difference and sharing a collective goal that all our digital services will be accessible. Accessibility. Make it your mantra.
So there's a couple of themes in there about accessibility's benefits beyond disability. It's about creating a great experience for a greater number of people. And I think when we took this new gospel of accessibility across our workforce, one of the key challenges is, well, how do we shift our thinking from this view of accessibility being something that legally you have to do for project teams and so forth, to something that commercially and morally makes sense and we want to do. And when I think about culture and what it is, it dictates how a bunch of people in an organisation think, feel and act. So the way we need to approach accessibility is we need to think about, well, the emotional, how do we inspire hearts? We need to think about, well, the rational, how do we educate heads? And then, the practical tools for the job, how do we enable hands? So let me sort of touch on each of these in turn and sort of unpack them a bit. So when I talk about inspiring hearts, I think the challenge is we have many digital and tech teams, 30,000 or so, many offshore around the world. They've never met a customer or stepped foot in a bank branch. And we need to build a sense of empathy and compassion for our customers come in all different shapes and sizes. And we do that through surveys, through social media engagement, and most importantly through storytelling, the wow moments where we get it right and the horror stories where we don't. And we do it in a context that makes sense for us in banking. So, real quick example, a few weeks back I heard a story about a mum, Louise. She had a son, a teenage son, autism, borderline non-verbal. And Louise was complaining to the bank initially, saying, well, my son, when he's out with his support worker in town at the shops, was struggling to buy stuff. She was using a prepaid loyalty card, I think, at Starbucks, so he could only go there to get a drink. And could we do more? Do we have a sort of special current account for teenagers and so forth? And we gave Louise one of these BPay bracelets. So it's a wearable device. We have them in key rings too. And it's really the contactless chip that's in your debit card goes in here, and it creates a second separate virtual current account or wallet that you can top up just like a pay-as-you-go mobile phone. So we gave one, time went on, we got some feedback, but her son loved it. He could buy more stuff more easily from more places than ever before. So McDonald's, Sainsbury's, I don't know where young people go, but you get the idea. So he was enabled, i.e. he could do more. She went on to sort of say, based on the fact he was borderline non-verbal, that when he actually used it in shops and sort of tapped, the shopkeepers were like, wow, what is that? And her son came alive and lit up and was like, this is Barclays BPay. It's a wearable bracelet device. This is where you can get it from. And we should have paid him on commission. And it was a wonderful story about how it shifted his confidence, his communication, not just for friends and family, but for shopkeepers and strangers. And for me, that's about empowering, what people can become So we talk in Barclays about our plans about using inclusive technology to enable and empower all people to work, bank and reach their full potential. And that's a lovely strapline, but it's quite hollow unless we tell it through the human stories that bring it to life. And I'd encourage you all to think about what more you can do to find and tell those stories. So next up, educating heads. So this is about the business case, the rationale. We've just done research this year. We priced the spending power, the purple pound, of disabled people in their households, hot for press, at £265 billion. So that's a reason why we should focus on this. We also need to think about reasons why not. We speak to lots of projects internally, we speak to lots of suppliers who they just don't get this. And often when we unpick that, it's these sort of myths and misconceptions. They think the disability market is tiny. They think that people aren't complaining enough, so we must be doing an okay job. They, think about, well, accessible design means really boring, plain text design. And that it's not really their responsibility. So a lot of work we do, and appreciate. There's a very noisy slide here, and again, I'm doing my best to audio describe to make this as inclusive as possible. Really, we take those 5 sort of myths and we put the facts of, well, why don't people complain? Well, 1 in 10 disgruntled online shoppers who have an access need complain because the other 9 don't actually think it will make a difference. They don't bother. Or the fact that accessible design, when done properly, it's there for folks who need it and it blends into the background and is invisible to those who don't. So these infographics all available on our website, and we've made a great YouTube video I just showed you on YouTube too. So third bit is about the practical, the tools for the job. And we do this through using a whole bunch of enterprise tooling our digital and tech teams use as they build new digital experiences, mobile apps and web pages. They can scan and spot some of the common accessibility obstacles. The way we support projects now that things are done in bite-sized chunks. If folks are familiar with Agile and Lean or the DevOps concept, we have to change our approach from less long-winded checklists to more principles-based approaches, supporting teams and a real focus on awareness and training. So mandating e-learning across those teams, around role-based training, online communities, and building accessibility into the building blocks that teams use. So folks familiar with design patterns, style guides, component libraries, these things are all key, making sure we get it right, and we get it right first time. I think when we get the right culture, we can do great stuff going way beyond compliance. And there's an example on screen of our new, bigger screen pin entry token. So these are the little calculator devices you pop your debit card into, you enter your pin, and then you get a code that you can use when you're on your home PC, doing online banking or in branch. And again, we did have a version that was a talking alternative for the blind, but based on feedback and engaging, we rebuilt a new version that covered a broader set of access needs. Really useful insight, dealing with a whole diverse mix of disabled and older customers, colleagues, suppliers, iterating to get this right. And when we think about accessibility not being about a checklist and being about the people using our tech, we kind of have a slightly different focus. And the slide here shows our inclusive design principles. So we've built these and built off these with our friends at the Pacello Group. And they have a real focus on making sure that technology is simple and intuitive for everyone, going beyond that bar. So how do we make these pin-centric devices simple and intuitive? Well, we speak to people and we understand the way they use a cash machine and the tactile buttons, let's say. We need to port that and make that work on the pin-centric devices. So again, these infographics you can find online too. And when we actively engage and we listen and act on the feedback from customers, it helps all our services. So our high visibility debit cards this year, big bugbear from typically older customers who struggle reading the 3-digit security code. Think about this when you're frantically doing your online shopping over the next week. It's quite tough if you've got low sight. So actually making them bigger and bolder, is hugely helpful. And a lot of these resources, again, we publish online because we want to actually share this accessibility know-how. We see many companies taking our stuff, making it as their own, and I think there's a great story there about democratizing accessibility and the know-how. Now, I've rushed through that because I wanted to get on to the forward-looking bit, the exciting, sexy stuff, and the future for banking. And I believe that this will include something like this: simpler, safer, smarter tech, powered by predictive AI and personalised in a way that works for everyone. And I want to kind of step us through that sentence. So first off, things are getting simpler. I think we can all agree our mobile phones, doing mobile banking and having the core information, the core need-to-knows on our bank screens, our bank balance and transaction history, makes things super simple. And 5 years ago we didn't have a bank app, a mobile app. Now we have one used by 5.5 million people on average each and every day to check their bank balance. But I think we're also seeing simpler ways to interact with it. And like Jeremy, I'm going to try a live demo. So let's see if this will work. So one of the ways is about voice. And think about a thought experiment, how you have to pay a friend and how complicated that can be, all the different steps. So I need to pay a friend, Claire, for some overpriced coffee. So let me see, I've got a smartphone running VoiceOver, so hopefully that will help you follow along. Use Barclays to pay Claire Clark £3.50 for coffee.
Which one? Claire Clark or Claire Clark Smyth?
Claire Clark. Got a couple of Claires in my address book.
I'm sorry, Barclays hasn't set that up with me yet.
Oh, let me try again. Use Barclays to pay Claire Clark £3 for coffee.
To confirm, you'd like to send that to Claire Clark?
Yep. Okay, fingerprint.
Okay, I have your Barclays payment of £3 to Claire Clark with the note. Cough. Do you want to send it?
Yeah, a bit.
Barclays sent your payment.
I'm being a bit too ambitious and chatty whilst trying to explain this. But you can kind of understand I'm in a stressed keynote at the moment, but how that can be super simple for lots of people. The amount of having to hit the right buttons and to do that, for many customers, it's quite difficult. So doing it in a conversation, we're going to be hearing lots about voice throughout the day. And I think for me, setting aside the wizardry, it's about how, rather than users having to learn increasingly complicated systems, it's this paradigm shift where those complicated systems now learn users, which I think is super powerful. Next up, safer. So the way we buy stuff. I mean, put your hand up if you've used cash so far today. Anyone? Okay, yeah, a few of you, sort of minority, I think by the looks of things. As card payments and contactless are super prevalent, increasing in popularity. And from an accessibility stance, having to tap, whether you're tapping a debit card, your smartphone using mobile payments, a wearable device, makes that super simple for lots of people, maybe too simple to part with your cash. We're seeing as well biometrics, whether you're using your fingers on a mobile banking app or mobile payments, whether you're using your voice print. So when you call telephone banking for us, we can confirm that you are who you say you are. And I'm soon shortly using your faces to also authenticate that you are who you say you are. All these things are super simple and super secure. I think we just need to get more comfortable in using them, and also the technology needs to evolve to be more accurate too. And I think the final bit about smarter kiosks. So, quick fact, 90% of the interactions Barclays have with our customers now are through a screen. They're not speaking to someone in a bank branch or me with a phone, through a screen. And half of those screens are owned by our customers. The other half are owned by us, so branch kiosks and cash machines. And that kind of changes the relationship. I think, as my smartphone's got more powerful, we can do more things. This month we've launched check imaging, so I can take a snapshot of a check, and it's convenient for me, and it also means it gets processed and paid far quicker. So that's helpful. I think our kiosks are also getting more feature-rich. We can do more things in branch, but we also need to make sure that they are accessible too. So something that we've been working hard on this year is to make sure there's multiple ways to do the same things. So rather than, if you struggle putting your debit card in, you can tap your debit card like NFC, or you can even tap your smartphone to then interact with the kiosk. Or on many of our kiosks, if I had an Android smartphone, I can, as visually impaired Paul, I can say I want £40 of cash. I can put my PIN code all on my accessible smartphone, and I can tap to get that cash out. So again, that flexibility, super important. I think the exciting bit in terms of AI is the powered by predictive insights. And, quick example, we're week 3 in November, we've got, Cyber Monday, Black Friday coming up. How many of us are going to be sort of stretched out and taking advantage of all those lovely sales? And think about the relationship that often happens at this time of year, that you probably get a text from your bank that you've gone overdrawn or you've exceeded your overdraft. And it's usually words to the effect of, "Hiya, you've gone overdrawn, here's a £25 overdraft fee. Have a nice day." and that's not a great experience, that reactiveness. So I'm excited about how AI and machine learning, understanding a person's monthly spending habits, maybe, let's say you get paid at the end of a month, you have bills and outgoings throughout. So that actually mid-month it could notify me and say, "Hey Paul, you're spending a bit too much." So you've got some options. You can either A, tighten your belt, you can B, move some savings in, C, you can extend your overdraft, or D, we can set you up a loan. And actually having a sort of push button process to do any of those, without having to fill out lots of paperwork, forms to set that up. So taking away the administrative faff is going to be huge. And I think where AI and machine learning is helping in banking too is bank statements. They are awful, aren't they? You sort of think about it, and it's kind of cryptic and meaningless about, oh, that's a cash machine withdrawal. So lots of work going on to categorise all of our spending in terms of what are the sort of sum total of your bills, or food spending, leisure spending, and helping us understand and better manage our money and budget month on month. I got this colourful pie chart from the web, and I thought it was funny because for visual learners it would make sense, but actually if you were colourblind it'd be pointless. So I think actually having multiple ways to show people the information is also important. And taking it one step on, AI acting as that sort of financial advisor in our pocket who can better help us get the best rates on savings accounts or the cheapest loans is also going to be key. And the final point was that personalisation at scale, at mass. And I'm sure many of you are getting lots of letters in the post from whoever you bank with about changes to T's and C's. And this new bank regulation changing early next year called open banking gets complicated with lots of APIs. But the way I explain it, there's an image up here that talks about, if a customer has 2 different bank accounts with Bank 1 and Bank 2, let's say this is HSBC and Barclays, then they kind of own their financial data, so they can choose to take that with them, and they can choose to view it and put it somewhere else, an online platform elsewhere, which is kind of the middle, the portal. And that gives far more choice and flexibility. That middle, it might be Barclays, it might be HSBC, it might be someone else, a fintech, a challenger bank. And to make that, super accessible and inclusive is really exciting. I know friends who say, yeah, I would use that bank account, but the website sucks. Or the corporate brand and logos, it's really hard to read the colours. So I think that detachment of where you bank, who you bank with, and where you go to online to actually view and manage your money is going to open up a whole, world of flexibility and choice. Now, we've talked about how tech is changing the way we bank, but we also need to be mindful of how technology and our relationship with it is changing too. Here's my picture of my 2 kids, Jess working the one's a unicorn, but I gave them a typewriter last weekend, and they were horrified about how thin it kind of was. I just thought it was looking like witchcraft. And when we think about younger generations, sort of millennials, Generation Z, kids and teenagers of today, they expect, to pinch and swipe and things just to work immediately. And we need to sort of think about the characteristics of, today's all about tomorrow's tech. We need to think about the kids of today who are building or will be building tomorrow's tech, and sort of what characterises them. And I think, well, actually, kids and teenagers of today, I'm kind of hopeful because I think they have, they're more globally aware than ever before of tackling some of these big societal problems. I think they're financially prudent, entrepreneurial, they're digitally savvy, they can find YouTube videos or answers online quicker than someone in a call centre that can read from a script. And they recognise the power of crowds, whether that's sort of social media or sort of product reviews online. I think one of the key defining things, though, is this point about, social impact and meaning, making an impact on the world. I think that many children, when we go out and talk about this at schools, they have the curiosity and compassion to sort of engage with people differently like them. I think they fundamentally understand that we learn the most, we grow the most when we speak to people not like us, because recognise, we realise that they're people like us. And I think that view about seeking out difference and inviting it in, I think, kids have, I think sometimes as adults, many of us need to, relearn that. And I guess the final point to end on is really the future for accessibility. So, one thing is about this organisational mindset shift I've touched on, which is like what I've been saying about this legal stick to commercial carrot, seeing accessibility as the benefit that goes beyond disability. I think that places a greater demand on accessibility professionals and the profession, many of which we have in the room. And I think it's not good enough anymore to just be a technical coder who sort of reviews a web page and does a report saying, here's what's broken. Those sort of technical skills are very important, but they're not all of it. We need people with the business skills that can work with those teams to actually get stuff done. We need people with the people skills who can train, evangelise, influence. They can run user research sessions to really consult with and tease out what is actually, not working and how do we improve this. And thirdly, there's really this view of mainstreaming accessibility features. So whether it's in our smartphones, I think it's nice that we have all this wizardry to make stuff bigger or captions or whatever else. But I'm sure tech needs to be better at, if I borrow someone's device and I'm always pinching to zoom to make it bigger, it needs to be able to recognise and prompt better for me so I can take advantage of that. I think this view of mainstreaming accessibility know-how is also important too. So whether your organisation has one accessibility expert or a team, I think actually everyone needs to know more about this agenda. And I think finally the sort of closing thought is really, in the past when I started, who was left out and left behind from not considering accessibility? There's people with access needs, it was disabled and older people. But I think the tides are shifting now, and I'm hopeful for the future, but I think that who's left out and left behind now are organisations and companies that don't pay attention to this accessibility topic. So that's what I'd like to end. Again, some links to some of the web pages where many of those resources are, and I think we've hopefully got some giveaways at the end. Now, I don't know, Mark, if we've got time for Q&A or if we're going to hop on to the next speaker.
I'm going to jump on to the next one, which is a panel. Thank you, Paul. Brilliant.